Hey guys, thanks for visiting my channel. My name is Toby. Today I'm gonna explain something to you and teach you something about Napoleonic warfare and why Napoleon's French army at the time was the best of its day and the most powerful in Europe. Now, I don't have any technical skills or applications or a very canny to the eye video with cool animations, but what I do have is for you to, at the end of a couple of 10-minute videos, that you will have an innate understanding and can explain to everybody why Napoleon's army was the best of its day. Now, to first understand Napoleonic warfare, you have to understand that warfare at the time was dictated by the firearm technology they had. Now, this firearm technology was not yet developed enough for armies to totally rely on them. But they were developed enough to provide a dominating role on the battlefield. Now, often when we look at these types of battles, we consider them suicidal and insane because we see troops walking up to each other until about 50 to 100 meters and they unleash fire upon each other. And they just keep standing there like they're a bunch of statues. And this is strange to us. And I want to explain this to you, why this was. Because first of all, let us understand that the fire ratio of a hit with a musket is not great. Yeah, maybe at max range 40 paces, you can shoot further than that, but you will have lost all your accuracy. So maybe 1 in 6 shots would be a hit. Now, to counter this and to increase the odds, they put as large as numbers as possible into a battalion without losing its maneuverability, yeah, by keeping it a tactical and not a strategical force. So to keep it small, but also to provide it with as many muskets as possible. Now, what Napoleon did is decrease these battalions. First of all, because these battalions were way too clumsy when they're numbered 8 to 1,000 men. If you put a battalion, which was the smallest tactical unit at the time, generals and officers did not count it in companies or in regiments, they counted in battalions. Because battalions mattered, because a battalion was the smallest formed tactical unit. It was a formed unit of about 6 line infantry companies, some grenadier companies, some skirmishers. So they would not divert from this because this was their battle order. Now, if we take an example of a today's soldier, yeah, he can lie down when he's fired upon. In fact, he's taught and drilled to lie down when he's fired upon. But he can still fire back because the technology provides him with that. At the time, this was not possible to lie down without sending an open invitation to the enemy cavalry to tramp you into the ground and to provide your entire army with the weak spot if you lie down. Yeah, you would just be a weak spot in your entire army and you will be attacked. So armies, therefore, like always, provided as less weak spots as possible. Now, what Napoleon did, first of all, is he trained his men to live off the land. Yeah, he would send out, in each battalion, he would send out companies that were tasked with scavenging food. Like an ant colony, they would provide themselves of food, wood, for burning, to keep themselves warm or for cooking. But moreover, in France, canned food came out, or jarred food came out. So now Napoleon's troops can provide themselves and sustain themselves in the field longer than any other army. Yeah, this makes them less dependable on their supply system. Now let's take a look at other European army, like the Austrians or the Russians. They are constantly bound to wait for their supply wagons, so they can maybe march 15 to 20 miles a day. Now, can you imagine if it rains or you have defrost of the ground and you get muddy fields, your supply wagons will be bogged down, and your most front units will be forced to bog down, to stop and wait for the supply systems to catch up. What Napoleon did hereby was he increased the flexibility and speed of his army. Now, the French army was first of all well drilled in heavy marches. They could march further than any other troops. But this was not possible if it had not been logistically possible. And this was only done because of canned and jar food, and because Napoleon taught his troops to live off the land, and he would send scavenger companies out. Now, what he did next is he brought the carriages that was no longer needed and the horses from the supply system, and he put it into the artillery. Now, therefore, his artillery, which Napoleon was always considered his most dominating weapon, and we always consider Napoleon and we link him to artillery because not only he was an artillery commander and he was a specialist in artillery, but he actually brought artillery from a supporting role to the most dominating role on the battlefield. Because what he did, first of all, he drilled his artillery crews better. Thereby, they could not only fire in batteries, but fire in one mass, or what Napoleon called one grand battery. Moreover, now they had more wagons and carriages and horses provided to the artillery, because they were not needed in the supply system much more any longer. Now, this made Napoleon's artillery the most effective. Now, it wasn't per se light artillery, as Napoleon's French artillery was most often of 9 to 12 pounders, which was considered pretty heavy if you compete them with a 6-pounder artillery piece. But Napoleon gave him new type of carriages, which made them easy to transport, and he basically just provided much more logistical support to his artillery than any other European army. Now, next thing what Napoleon did was he divided his army into several self-contained army corps, several miniature armies, each a well-balanced force of infantry, cavalry, and artillery. And this is what we call today combined operations. Each unit or each type of element in this army takes away each other's weaknesses. Now let's combine this, or put this in a modern perspective. If you have a tank in a street, that tank has many dead corners and needs to be supported by infantry outside. But if that infantry runs into a fortified building or a fortified position, they're going to need that tank to knock it out. So therefore they help each other. And Napoleon employed this throughout his entire army with infantry, cavalry, and artillery. Because the French troops were less dependent on the supply system, they can move further. They can move about 25 to 30 miles a day. And therefore had not only much more speed, but also much more initiative. And the last factor Napoleon gave him was the element of surprise, because these miniature armies would march a day away from each other. So you could never guess where the main blow was going to come from. And Napoleon could do this because he trusted his troops, unlike most other European armies, which saw the troops as scum, because the most commanders came from high classes and nobility, upper classes, and saw the soldiers as just scum, as they came from the most low-ranking classes, as they were often conscripts. Now, I hope you have a better understanding. Oh no, wait, there's one more thing I'd like to tell you. Napoleon also, when battle was joined, one of these miniature armies could sustain himself long enough till another one would join it within a day. But Napoleon would strip away its artillery and form what he called a grand battery, and he would dominate the battlefield with that. Now you can imagine 80 cannons firing on a field on which your army has to advance. It will be stopped dead in its tracks. So, and because of all the carriage support and the wagons, Napoleon could, like Wellington said, wield his artillery like pistols on the battlefield. Now, thanks for watching. I hope you stay tuned. There's more coming. And have a nice evening.